And here's Tom Dunne. Thank you very much.
How you doing? My name is Tom Dunne. I've got a mission to make. I'm a fraud. When I wrote this yesterday, I meant it in a certain way. The more the other conversations I've got on, the more I feel like a fraud in some ways. What I mean is, I feel that way standing in front of you talking about this particular piece of work. I also feel that way on the basis of having my presentation like everybody else, of being involved in a story that involved Matt makeup. I'm not sure how that quite happened, what the connection was. But I'm encouraged by Sean's view expressed by David that experts cause greater confusion, so hopefully not being an expert I won't cause any further confusion. In relation to this piece of work, the reason I feel that I'm not the best person to speak about this, any number of people in Kildare Youth Services could talk more authoritatively about this piece of work than I, because they lived it, they were involved in it, they've engaged in it. Hilary, sitting down the back of the room, could talk much more authoritatively than I about this piece of work, which was done in conjunction with YWI Maynooth, and Hilary was centrally involved in that. So it's in that sense that somebody who wasn't involved in the piece of work itself is standing here talking to you about it. That's why I feel a little bit like a fraud. Bear that in mind later on when the Q&A session is on and I refer all the questions to Hilary. I should be clear, I won't be talking about the specific findings and outcomes of the piece of research that we carried out. We're currently still working with YWI to bring that to a conclusion in the coming months, and we look forward to sharing that at another opportunity in the near future. So I'm not going to go into the details of that, we'll wait for another opportunity. I do feel though some of the conversations that we've had so far, that I hear echoes of the conversations Hilary and Morris and myself and Tommy have had in terms of what's coming out of that piece of research, things about plain language, things about using our own terminology, things, you know, so there's threads running through the other conversations that I feel encouraged are reflected in our own piece of work. However, where I come to this story kind of I bring a certain objective perspective, I suppose, coming to it, not being involved in the delivery of it, and looking at it from an objective and outside point of view. My previous professional incarnations in Poly Standards gave me some sense of an overview of practice and how people engage in effective practice throughout the country in different organisations. And when I compare what I've seen in Kildare Youth Services in that perspective, what I see is a culture whereby youth work teams and individuals approach the work and think about the work in a particular way. And some of what was said earlier kind of has fleshed out that idea. What do I mean by culture? And it is that thinking on your feet piece that they've talked about, just actually reacting rather than, you know, so there is the planned, organised, you know, part of that, but there's also what I see is people just behaving in a certain way, just doing their work in a certain way, having conversations that evidence the work that has gone on through this research process and before that too. I mean, the kind of culture that I see in the organisation isn't, in my view, isn't developed through one piece of work, but through a combination of factors. You know, there's necessarily organisational leadership over an extended period of time that goes into the creation and maintenance of spaces where people can, spaces and a working environment where people can reflect, where people can discuss, where people can challenge. That doesn't happen overnight, it doesn't happen through one piece of work, it happens you know, over a longer period of time where people feel comfortable in that setting with each other and really getting involved in it. It also requires the buy-in and participation of individual staff, individual people, youth workers and their teams to invest the time in the process and to buy into it properly. And the more comprehensive list of factors I think Maria presented you know, are all part of that that space and creating that environment where people can take the time to step back a little bit and ask themselves some critical questions. I mean, the fact that KYS engaged in this research piece of work is symptomatic of that culture that already exists in the organisation and was developed over a period of time, I feel. The particular project that allowed the organisation to put a particular structure and focus around capturing the practice that was going on in the organisation. Some of the tangible outcomes of the project are that the development, and I'm loath to say this after I don't want to see another template, but the development and implementation of a reflective practice tool that's reproduced in the scene was one tangible piece. The integration of reflective practice into our support supervision system and how that operates is another tangible outcome. What I've seen coming into the organisation is that individual youth workers and the teams within which they operate, as a matter of course, think about or reflect upon their practice and use that to influence their ongoing practice. It's embedded within the organisation. Now maybe I'm biased, and I know it's probably sounded like a part of political broadcast on behalf of KYS, but again I'm speaking not to take credit, but just as a reflection on what I've seen of an organisation. And in 2007, many months ago, I carried out a peer assessment in Kildare. I'm not sure if anybody in the room carried that out with me, but I do see some peer assessors. That was one of the findings from that assessment then by the peer assessment team, was that this was an organisation who invested time and effort into creating that environment where staff individually and in their teams had a space to reflect and think about their work and to develop from that. I'm not presenting KYS as some sort of paragon of virtue in this regard. I've encountered many individuals and many groups within the organisations who've evidenced similar strengths. But I'm encouraged that this particular research project has cemented that culture within the organisation that I work in. The challenge for us all is to maintain and build on that. The challenge of days like today is to take that from Kildare Youth Services, to take the learning from Limerick, from all of the different regions, and to bring that to the wider family of Youth Work Ireland. And I hope today we'll do something towards that. And I feel the findings of our research project, I'm really encouraged at what I've heard today in terms of the connections there, but I feel that will make the contribution to the conversation, a positive contribution to the conversation that we've started here today. So thanks.